Yeah, just so you have some background on this, there's kind of two pieces of this. One is that, so we have, obviously our administration that we work with, and then at Education Services, we have a woman who works with all of the secondary coaches. Her name's Amy McIntosh. I don't know if you've had occasion to meet her. So she works with us and to like coach us as coaches.
Okay.
And we just kind of told her like we would love some feedback on how we're doing in our conversations. And we recently read a book and went to a training just on Friday from a man who talks about like just how to have more effective conversations. And the number one thing that he says over and over again is like you have to videotape them and watch yourself back. I'm like,
that's my master's makes us do that all the time, and I hate it.
Yeah, it's going to be excruciating, I'm sure, especially because I'm like, oh.
That's the stuff I can't get past. I started doing audio only because I can't get past looking at myself on video. Like I'm paying attention to like, what were you thinking? Why did your hair?
Yeah,
just video
Did you
audio.
put together that outfit?
Yeah. Oh my God, you have to get your hair done. Like,
yeah.
What were you? Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully, like, the whole idea, because I know, I don't want you to think, like, it's being sent off into, like, some abyss. The whole goal of it is just for us to get smarter about how we talk to teachers, since that's
awesome.
Really the most important part of the work that we do. So,
yes.
So here's basically what we're going to work through, Amy, is Anne's going to be our note taker today. And then I saw that this is the protocol you'd selected, the here's what, now what, so what. We thought that it might be important before we actually get into looking at your students' work, just to make sure we have some background on what it is that you're looking at. And I might, as I listen to you talk, just write down some notes on here just for my own processing. So after we have some, gather some background information, then we'll move into looking at your students' work and talking about what you're seeing and where it's taking your thinking. Okay.
Awesome.
So tell us about the class that you chose and the assessment in that class.
So I chose Algebra 1 just because, it's the least put together curriculum. It's the one I'm always kind of like struggling with. Is it the freshman beginning to high school? Is it the content? Is it what? So obviously the more help I can get on Algebra 1, the better. I guess this is the most recent one, which is why, if there's something, an aha moment that comes of it, I can still apply it, which is obviously best. But we did a kind of precursor, total pre-test, what do you know as far as solving goes. And solving is kind of the very basic of like, can you solve for a variable, which leads us into a system of equations, which leads us on and on. So that's kind of, solving is the overarching unit we are in. So we did our pre-test. It wasn't super pretty, but whatever, that's why we do it. We kind of expected that they knew more, but it's good to know going into it. So then we've taught just kind of the first couple units of it, which is very basic level. So now, assuming you know this, we are going to apply it to all of our systems. But we wanted to make sure we get some little quiz in there to make sure that they're getting the basic level before we move into systems. And for some reason, systems is always slightly easier, I think because it's more applicable, which is why it can go unnoticed that they don't understand the basic level of things. So that's kind of what this quiz was. Stuff they have been taught, but only basically run through once. And then we can use this to kind of compare with some of the pre-test stuff we did, which is also good. At least, if it's not going well, it's their growth.
So, Amy, I hear you using the word we a lot. Is this a common formative assessment that your team developed? Okay. And then I also heard you say that they have been taught this material. Does that mean this is what they learned first semester?
No, this is just kind of what we've gone through so far this semester.
Okay, I see.
And a lot of it is review from 8th grade or whatever their previous class is in theory. But since everyone comes in with very different readiness levels, that's kind of some of what the pre-test checked for sure, but some of what we're still addressing as we go through this.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the instruction that you provided in preparation for this quiz on solving.
So really it's just some basic walking through example problems. The first couple, really most of these, are pretty self-intuitive in that they've done the basic level of it on and on and on for many, many years now. but it's just when we get to adding new layers and new layers. So we kind of would put, something they know how to do as their warm-up on the board. And then we would put another example problem up. Okay, now this one has distribution, here's your reminder on how to do it. Here's your next problem that you guys are going to do. So we do one as a class and they would do one. And they sit in groups and they can kind of help each other out to figure it out. And we just kind of keep adding a layer on each time. And then we kind of did the intro to inequalities. Okay, it's the exact same as solving that we did the last couple days, but now there's the inequality feature, so it's, you do it exactly the same, except if you have to divide or multiply by a negative. So, are we going to remember to do this? Now, what does it look like on a number line? Can you graph it? And so that will take us into graphing not just on a number line, but whole linear, so then we take the solving into systems of equations, and then we'll add in systems with inequalities. So it's just kind of all supposed to be building upon each other, and most of it was just start with something add a layer, you do it, add a layer, you do it, on and on for days.
I love the idea that you're starting with something that they have some confidence and familiarity with, and then challenging them by adding those additional steps. So tell us a little bit about what you expected to see when you sat down to look at these.
I think my expectations have really been curbed over since last semester. Since we go through it and we're talking to them and they're asking good questions, I feel like everyone should ace it. It should be perfect, I realize that they're going to drop a negative or they're going to, so not perfect, but more or less really, really good. But then I felt like that sometimes last semester and it would just blow up and, so overall I was impressed though. It really was just either silly mistakes that, that's just always a matter of math, or a couple legit concept like, okay, if we just go through this again, you'll be fine. They're very common, just not flipping your inequality or something of that sort. So it's just like, okay, here's the 2 rules. You do it again. Let's practice it 10 times. Throw in a couple that don't do it so you can not just get, okay, every time I'm going to flip my inequality, like kind of remember what your rule is. So hopefully that'll make it go better.
Good. I love hearing that because I know one of your huge frustrations first semester is you felt like you were expecting to see something and then you would sit down and look at your data and be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's a trend overall in your assessments, that you're feeling like your expectations are a little bit more in line with your results?
I think so. I think a lot of this semester is better math, right? It's more black and white and less conceptual, which isn't great in that we want the concept for math. Like we want to constantly be applying it to the real world, but that is the hardest part. So I think they will do better with this semester just because it's follow these steps, spit out your answer.
Maybe a little bit more in line with what they're familiar with.
Exactly.
In the world of
unfortunately.
Math. Yeah. Do you feel like Agile Mind tries to teach more conceptually and that's part of where the challenge comes in? I'm curious.
I think that's a big part of it, is they really want to put the concept in there. But then sometimes it also gets out of order. Like without understanding the math behind it, can you do the concept? And maybe so, but it seems to be more of a challenge. And kind of as a PLC group, we're not following Agile Mind too much anymore. But as we go through, I do look for their animations are still good,
Yeah.
So I am still looking for things that I can use in Agile Mind to kind of help reinforce what we're teaching.
Yeah. I'm curious, I think we told you this, that we went to this professional development around math and working with teachers who teach on math, and it's kind of shelved for now because Anna and I are working on professional development around grading, but that's a place we want to go in the near future, and I'm curious to talk to you about it and hear some of your ideas, because I learned math the way that you're talking about, where it was like, plug in the numbers, see the equations, and the way that she was talking about teaching math so conceptually was really interesting. But also I was like, I can see how it would be a challenge as a teacher not having learned math that way, and it would be challenging for students too who are coming from, this is the way we've always done it, and now you're coming in and sort of boggling.
Well, I think a lot of the time that we've caught them, and I haven't seen Agile Mind from its start, right? Mm-hmm. So the kids I have now had Agile Mind going through. Mm-hmm. So, but we're catching them at a place where they're kind of used to seeing the conceptual first. So I don't even think that's necessarily the issue, other than when the math gets really hard, the jump between like, oh, you have 4 marbles and 7 marbles, now you have 7 of something. That conceptual is so easy. Whereas like looking at a graph, and this isn't, even though it's doing this is not a graph of a hill, like, tell us what's going on, and yet you're still telling me it's a hill, you know, it's just, I get it, if you're not a math person,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very disheartening to a lot of the kids, I think,
Mm-hmm.
so they just kind of like, I don't know, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, at least you can like fix your mistake, opposed to just having to run through examples. Yeah,
Yeah.
having the black and white, I think at least like you can fix it and get it right. And there's so much focus on the grade opposed to like the concept and the learning, which is a whole other issue.
Yeah. Yes, always an issue.
Yes.
So we're going to move into the protocol, Amy, and if it's okay with you, I will just randomly pick 4
Yeah.
students out of here that we can, whose work we can look at. So I
Top
don't.
one's my key, so that's not going to help you.
Okay. I'll just pick. Will it screw you up if I choose a couple from different classes?
I know classes already.
Okay. I figure by now you probably do, but sometimes it can be confusing. So, I'll just choose. Oh, is this a class pile here too?
Yeah, this is a
Okay.
class file too.
I'm gonna grab a random one out
Last
of there
one I
too.
graded.
And really our whole goal of this, Amy, is helping us as practitioners get to a place where we're using our student work to get smarter about our own practices. And I think, I don't know if you find this to be true, but certainly what I find to be true is that you're in this constant flow as a teacher of like, I create, I teach, I grade, I create, I teach, I grade, and sometimes that idea of really slowing down to be reflective is something that we don't have
Yeah.
time / we don't make time to do. And so the whole goal of this is for us to just really be deliberate in slowing down and being reflective about our practice. And like you said, it's such a great time in the semester to do it because it's so early on, and hopefully the conversations that we have can help us get smarter moving forward. So this is the protocol that you selected, and we'll try to kind of stick in these spaces relatively linearly. So the here's what that we're going to start with is really factual. So we'll look through these pieces of student work together, and I'll just ask you to tell me simple things like what sticks out to you, what do you see? We'll move to the so what.
Like
and
about
this,
what they're doing?
yes.
Okay.
The so what is more inferential. Like, I love this question. Why do we think this happened? What interpretations do you have? So, for example, I heard you mention that some of the students just made silly mistakes. So maybe that's one interpretation. And then the now what. This is a really important part, and I heard you say this earlier, like, that hopefully looking at student work can lead you to some kind of aha moment that you can apply. That's what the now what is all about, is getting to that aha moment. So we will start with Nate. Tell me what sticks out to you about Nate's work.
So we broke this up into the sections of kind of the 3 different things we've taught. Just solving equations, and then solving and graphing with the inequalities, and then rearranging equations. So there's no numbers, it's all letters, just applying the basic math concepts, which they tend to do really well with the solving, but then when there's no numbers in it, all of a sudden, like, I can't tell that that's multiplication because it's letters, you know. You don't use this a ton. So this is kind of the challenge, which is why there's only 2 questions of it and 4 of the others. It really, like, I can tell you understand when you can do this, but you're not necessarily going to use it a lot. So that's why we kind of have just the 2 questions. So for Nate, what stands out to me is just the simple concept of when you're dividing or multiplying by a negative, he missed that. He's not doing it.
Okay.
And that's, you know, a really easy thing to fix.
Is that all of these
Yep.
errors are basically
Well,
the
that's
same?
all of these errors. A couple of them, so that's why it's always 1/2. If they solved it wrong, but then they still graphed how they solved, I gave it to them. Because those 2, you know, you're graphing what you solved for. It doesn't happen to be the right answer, but you understand the graphing based on your numbers. So that one he did graph wrong. But the rest of them he graphed right, he just solved wrong.
I love that you're looking for opportunities to celebrate the things that they are understanding and learning. That's great. So dividing by negatives, Nate.
Yes.
What about Kyle? Kyle's a rock star.
Kyle, he's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is round 2 of Algebra 1 for Kyle, so that's good.
We're
We're
glad
glad
he's
he's
there.
got it now. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's even kind of you know, some other concepts that we talk about, but I don't necessarily always see, like he breaks apart his fractions, where you can break apart the numerator, but you have to keep the same denominator, and he's doing that really well. He doesn't take it to the next step of simplifying, but that's kind of, you know, here's the answer I want, here's the next step, and he's already did the next step. Maybe not the next step, but that's good.
That's great.
Yeah. Go Kyle.
Go Kyle. What about Ashlyn?
Ashlyn, I mean, all year we know she's missing some background, so that's kind of a challenge that we keep working with. Most of her mistakes are, you know, just adding when you should be subtracting, which is not small. I mean, that is kind of a big, you know, when it is a negative there, you have to add it to the other side. So that is a big kind of conceptual error, for sure. But it's the same error in a lot of these, which is kind of good.
She's not making a lot of different conceptual errors.
Exactly. You know, otherwise when things are multiplied, she's dividing them apart. She's keeping her, you know, negative and negative to get a positive. So otherwise, we're doing pretty well. Well, not always.
Yeah. Anything else with Ashlyn?
So flipping the inequality again, showing your work. I can't find where your errors are if you don't show your work.
Yeah.
So she's got even kind of the challenge problems pretty well, I would say. But there is some big components we're missing, right? Like when you're simplifying a fraction, it can't go from a fraction to a whole number if your denominator was bigger. You know, like just fractions kill kids. Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a breakdown way back in elementary school, middle school?
It must be.
Yeah.
It must be. Yeah, so both of her errors down here are fractions and just not understanding what a fraction means.
And then Zachary.
Well, he didn't solve two of them, so that makes it challenging. He graphed it, and I think one of them he graphed wrong, and I don't know. You know, did you not flip your sign? Did you, if you don't show me work, I have no idea what went wrong there. His solving went really well, so I can guess that he's just not flipping signs or something, but without work, it's kind of hard to know.
Is this typical of something you see in his work, that he will skip problems or steps?
He's doing it in his head. I don't need to write it down.
I see.
It is. But he wrote all of his work for this, so at least that's, I guess, a good first step. The inequalities are shorter problems, less steps, so I think he did that in his head.
And that's why you underlined this, as
Yes.
you can't just do this
You
direction.
can't just graph. You need
have
to
to do
solve
this
the inequality,
direction
please.
too.
Yeah, so I underlined solve, please. And he got one of the rearrange problems, which is awesome. The other one, he didn't. And I think it's just, you know, kind of comes down to understanding those math concepts without the numbers in them. He does it really well with numbers,
I see.
but he doesn't, it's not so cemented like each process that he can do it with the letters. That's okay.
So with Zach, I hear you say, kind of one of your interpretations is he doesn't feel compelled, basically, to show all the stuff. I kind of remember that,
Yeah.
like, from being in math class. I was
And-
like, why do I have to show my work?
Yeah, we get it all the time, and he's one, but he's obviously getting better, you know. He has learned the hard way that he would rather have partial credit than no credit for a small error that went wrong in his head.
What about with some of your other students? So here are some things that I wrote down with Nate, that one of his struggles was with the subtraction in the division problems. Kyle was the rock star who got everything correct. Ashlyn was adding when she should be subtracting, but did well with the challenge problems, struggled with the fractions. Do you feel like this random sampling is fairly representative of what you saw in your students' work?
Yeah, I mean, I have anywhere from missing a lot of background that's making this challenging to rock stars. The flipping the sign was a common mistake. The graphing sometimes is still a little bit shaky. So I think for the most part, the mistakes were pretty universal.
Okay.
Which is awesome. That's a good thing. That helps me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than having random stuff for everyone to try to fix. If it's one thing across the board, we can fix that.
Yeah. So when you think about drawing conclusions about the student work, it sounds like what you're saying is they're missing a lot of the background information needed for this. Simple
Select
things
kids
like
are missing
fractions.
the background information. For the most part, I would say across the board, it was flipping your sign on inequalities, the rules for that, and still some graphing inequalities. The solving went well.
Okay. Isn't that great when there's a pattern though?
Yeah, it really is.
When you can say, oh, okay, there's some tangible things I can walk away with this from. So what does this mean for you moving forward? Like, I imagine it's really challenging when I heard you talking about the disparate levels of background information that your students come in with. And now I have these students who are missing this pertinent background information, things that they should have learned a long time ago, like fractions. What do you do with that moving forward? How do you address that?
Well, so this in particular, I took some of these exact questions and put it on our warm-up for the next day, for yesterday. And then we kind of did a day of review. So we walked through like a whole bunch of just rearranging solving, and then we did a whole bunch of solving inequalities and graphing them. So new problems, but we did all the problems on here as a group too. And truthfully, only a few even recognized that it came from their quiz until I told them. But, that way it's in their notes. It has good review, but also good application once they see this again. So just kind of a day of review. Yeah. Mostly on inequalities, but some rearranging and just getting the rules down.
Do your students have an opportunity to revise their work?
So then once I give it back to them, with IXL, because IXL is kind of our group PLC intervention strategy, right? That's like our goal for the year. Mm-hmm. So I give it back to them with IXL for each section. So the deal is, if you missed even one from each section, you have to do the IXL. It's all or nothing, and you get 5 points added on. So if you got a 5 out of 10, you got a 50%, ouch. But now if we turn that into a 10 out of 15, you got a 65%.
That's awesome. That's great.
But you have to complete this all or nothing. IXL is good because if you just made silly errors and you can catch those easily, each one will take you 3 minutes. If you really don't get it, every time you get something wrong, it walks through the whole problem, so you get the immediate step-by-step feedback, so you can kind of look at your work with theirs, with IXLs. So you get that immediate feedback, and hopefully you can see where your errors are and correct it for the next one.
How great. I love the idea that you're creating opportunities for your students to not only recover from a grade perspective, but you're showing them this learning is still important.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't get it the first time, this learning is still important, and you're reinforcing that to them in your practice. That's really great.
And it's nice to have this tool that kind of grades as it goes and gives the immediate feedback.
Mm-hmm. Take some of the onus off of you.
Right.
When you already, I'm sure.
Well, if we did this for every quiz and test, and I had to grade all the IXL, all the intervention as well, I could never do that for 170 kids.
You need to get your kids a little bit older, and then you can sit them down in an assembly line and say, give them each a class. So I heard you say, Amy, in terms of kind of where you're going with this, that you've turned some of that missing background information into warm-ups. I think that's really great. That you're, because I can see how it would be kind of easy to go, well, they should have learned that a long time ago. We're moving on, but you're really slowing down and addressing that, but in a way that's not consuming all of your instructional time, and that you're also taking these problems and reviewing those common errors, the flipping, the signs on inequalities, graphing inequalities. What do you do then for a kid like Kyle, who has clearly got all of this stuff down?
Well, so we did some rearranging. So I did actually both of these. In kind of our lesson, but then I added in another one that was hard. Oh, good. And it's okay, here's your challenge. Don't freak out if you don't get this. Yeah. But try to apply at each step just kind of your rules of math and see. So someone like him will get it then, or maybe not, and that's the good challenge,
That's great. I love that you're differentiating and providing, layers of intervention for all of your students.
Hopefully working as groups, they will then kind of help the other people that clearly are not going to get that challenge problem.
Yeah.
To understand the steps. In one class that worked really well. Kyle doesn't really talk to anyone, so so that didn't work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my thinking. I was curious about your use of groups and talking a little bit about, thinking about how you structured your class over first semester and moving into second semester. How do you feel like individualized work versus group work? How have you seen that be successful, especially looking at a concept like this where you're reteaching using groups?
It really depends on the class.
I'm curious, tell me more.
Yeah, so I have 2 classes that it works really well. One class I have a lot of highs and a lot of lows, like 2 ends of the spectrum, very little in the middle. So I can ability group and they do a really good job. They're also a really small class.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of easy to keep them on task and buzz between each group pretty quickly. And then my second class is either average or high, like there isn't a whole lot of low in that class. So that also actually works pretty well and we get through a lot more content, so it's just kind of more practice problems for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then my 6th period, they can't do groups. We gave up on groups for a little while just because we can't stay on task. Not only can we not talk about math, but we can't even stay in our seat and we can't let go of the blinds and we can't, so that group does less groups.
You mean your 6th hour isn't impeccably behaved like all the other 6 hours in the field? Oh yeah, 6th hour is a tough one.
I know. And it's hard, freshmen they're tied to a class and a period, but not a teacher. So a lot of their schedules get shuffled.
Mm-hmm.
So we switched out a lot of 6th period kids, and a lot of the ones I gained, they're like, ooh, that comes with a warning sign. And a lot of the ones I lost, I'm like, you're getting my stars. No. I know. And then, you get some people and you get new people sitting next to each other and like, wow, I had no idea you were best friends. That's really awesome. Let's switch this now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I hear you saying though is that you're adapting your practice based on what you're seeing in your class, and that's
Yeah, so 2 algebra ones do really well with groups and one may not ever get there.
yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking about moving forward, Amy, in a bigger picture sense, we talked a little bit about this particular assessment and how you're addressing some of your students' challenges just with this, but in a bigger picture sense, what is some thinking that you have walking away from this about working with your students?
I think they're doing well. I think getting to address kind of solving for inequalities, and we would have seen it later, but why not do it now?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to go back and do systems of equations with inequalities, but that's so much more to them. Even though it's just 2 of the same thing, to them that's so much more. So I think it was, where we would have caught it later, sure, it will work better for them to have caught it earlier. So I think that's good. And it's just good to see that for the most part, we're good to keep moving on. One day we'll fix it, whereas sometimes you look at it and you're like, we can't fix that in a day. But on that note, there are a few students that you're like, yeah, we can't fix that in a day. And I can't just fix that in class. You know what I mean? So that's the other challenge, is just, even Ashlyn's one of them. Like, hey, let's come to math. Can you come to math lab? And you have this period off. Will you help me pick some music and we can sit and do, no, she can't. She won't show up.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so, I get the notes home, just like, hey, it would be so much easier for her if we could just kind of work some of these things out. I would love, here's our common off hours, and you can always do a peer tutor, and I think it's just not a priority.
In her home, you're saying?
Yeah.
So you've communicated these
Yeah.
same sentiments to her family,
Yeah.
and what's the response from her family?
Not much. No response.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. And that's okay.
So
That's just, that there's probably more than math class then.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine there's more.
Well, that's a good realization, I think, sometimes for us to come to, is kids have more going on
Yeah.
than me figuring out solving inequalities, and my
Yeah.
letters and numbers can
Like,
be the same
it
thing.
is applicable to the real world, but depends on what your real world looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you sought out her counselor at all, or?
There's a whole chunk I've given to counselors, just, hey, but the other problem is there's nowhere else, like, maybe you're not quite low enough to go into the extended, but then there isn't necessarily something else for you, you know? So, like, I have another one who dropped down from Algebra 2, and we're realizing doesn't even, like, I don't know how he ever passed Algebra 1, so, like, his mom is coming in, and we're gonna come up with a plan. Like, she's in it, she's involved, we were supposed to meet yesterday, but I turned to a doctor appointment, so, you know, she's coming in tomorrow, and we're gonna try to come up with a game plan. But it's also hard because I can't fix this in class. If they don't ask questions, there's only so much we can do with that. If they won't come into extra time, but I am by law not allowed to suggest a tutor.
Yeah. Have you looked at, I'm using her as an example just because she's kind of one of our 4 here, but have you looked at her schedule to see if she's like in study center or anything like that, where you can kind of hunt her down?
I think she was in study center, and I told Miss Brock, you know, hey, if she wants to work on some of the, she might not have been the one that was. There was one that was, but I think it was a boy actually. Yeah. No. But I found our coming off hours to try to suggest, like, hey, how about this time or this math lab or.
Do you know what she does during her off hours?
I don't. I know one friend she hangs out with, and sometimes they do math.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of them are super strong math students.
I'm not above stalking children.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that practice,
No,
but
good.
I'm like, oh, you spend your off hour in the library? Not anymore, because I'm going to come get you and we're going to hang out together.
Yeah. Well, the other hard part of that is that there usually is kids getting help, you know?
Yeah.
So it makes it hard for me to stalk them and grab them, though I have done it. But also, they see other kids in there and they're like, now I'm not going to ask a question.
Right.
You know, and like the math office is never empty, and math lab is rarely empty. You know, but that's why I'm trying to push the beginning of the semester before people realize, you know, there's no test to study for. They're not behind. Like, come now. No, like, come help me choose some music. Like, no.
You were looking at the master of getting
I
kids
know.
to come in and see her, and I'm like, I don't know.
Last semester
how
I
she
tried
works
to
her
put it in your
magic,
phone
but-
now strategy.
It's
It's a distinct ignore in that case, I realize.
I don't know. I think there's a lot with the relationship that goes into it, and it takes time to cultivate, because once you got them in, and I mean there are kids that I stalk to get in, but it takes time. I think the most effective piece I'd be curious to ask kids this year is the first couple kids I get in, I have them talk to the class about, was it scary? Like, you know, working one-on-one with Smith, what was that like when you sat next to her? Were you kind of worried about your own physical safety? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, so she didn't like bite you or harm you?
Yeah.
No. Well, what did you do? I worked on redos. Oh my gosh, what was that like working on redo? It's like, well, it was nice. I got it all done then, and then she like changed my grade right then and there.
Yeah.
Oh wow, so you saw like immediate result. You know, just kind of salesman, and getting the kids to tell what it was like. Because I think there is that fear, especially for freshmen.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
But the relationship piece, and one of the kids I still get to come in, Jesus, English is not his first language. He just works with Spencer and Petrus. I mean, literally this kid is, I don't know if you heard this when you were in there today. He was saying friends as a verb, not a noun. And I was like, oh, why? And then we'd go on to other nouns, and, you know, and he kept going, well, that's a verb. So it's an action word, like you know,
Do friendship.
Do friends. You know, you
That's
do,
Facebook.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's like getting him to understand, but different words. He'd label things prepositions, where the previous sentence he got it right. I'm like, so now why is this a preposition? And it's just, I think the relationship when they come in, and especially with guys, never making them feel dumb. Like, smallest successes, you know, and Jesus, I'm constantly like, I can't believe how smart you are that you get this. You know how many kids I have that struggle with this? Because I know for him, he's felt dumb his entire life with English. And I think Petros too, it's not a natural language for him, and so it's getting them to feel smart about the work and the effort that they're doing. I don't know. I'm not above bribery and candy being there. I know some teachers, like Mara has a bucket of candy that sometimes when kids come in, hey, let's pull out our bucket of chocolate and have it in front of us. Oh, she has chocolate. When you go and work, you know, anything with a relationship. and getting kids to talk about it. Like when they've done interventions with you on here, they came in, hey, so-and-so came in, I had a couple kids, would you guys be willing to talk about just, a couple of takeaways you got from that? They're your best salespeople.
Okay.
Well, and what you said, this is maybe a simple thing, but what you said about changing their grades right away is so smart. So because I know I'll collect redos and they sit in my pile of things that I hate looking at because you're pulling up each thing individually, but for them to see that immediate result, that's a smart idea too.
And they get to go home to mom and dad, like, hey, I did this and I fixed that grade. They get in trouble for the grade, or I fixed it. Well,
and you're great too, Ian, about then sending an email to the parent about like, hey, your kid came in this morning and did this, and like giving them really immediate
or like all-star stuff they do in class.
Yeah.
Like, text your mom and dad right now. Say, Smith just called me a rock star because I did this. It's like the relationship thing, you can get those kids to, I have more kids that give up lunch to spend lunch doing stupid grammar and writing. It just makes me, I find it flattering that they're coming in.
Yeah.
But it takes time and it's work.
Yeah.
But it pays off. I love hearing the reflection you're getting from these kids about where you're seeing their growth and the realizations you're coming to, because I think that's huge. And in the meaningful planning you're doing, you're on your way, Amy. It's just you keep reflecting about you and what you're doing. And I think about that all the time. It's like, man, I did a crap job because I didn't set them up for successes, because, if I would have switched the order of this, or now I'm realizing I jumped too fast to this next concept, and really we need to spend time in groups, and I'm going to have these experts teach this thing again, and we're going to come back to it again. Oh, they got that better. Okay, rewriting my lesson plans. Don't do it this way. Do it this way. But always thinking about me and what I'm doing, because, that's my job. Is to present the learning in ways that are manageable, chunkable, understandable, that they can build. And I loved hearing you talk about, well, first we're doing it this way, and then we're going to build from that and do it that way, and then we're going to build. And you're all about setting them up for success. You don't understand how great that is. That really is awesome that you get that. And then coming back to the same idea the next day, one, that just starts kids off like, oh, I got this. Right at the beginning of class, they're already feeling successful, and you get to build off that success for the rest of class. So even when they're struggling, like, hey, you already did this. Remember at the beginning of class? You got this.
Your notes. Yeah.
So I wrote down a couple of things, Amy, when I asked you, you were talking about like having that aha moment and applying it, and I wrote down 2 smart things that you said. One was that idea that like sometimes we can look at assessments and go, I can fix that in a day.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a like powerful, simple takeaway, is like if you think about with each assessment you do, if you can set aside a day of your curriculum to really fix those kind of common struggles, how powerful that is in the long run. I love that takeaway. And then you said this question, and I love this. You said, but what about students who can't fix it in a day?
Yeah.
Students like our Ashlands, and I think that's maybe the challenge that we have moving forward, all of us, right? Because we all have students like that. Is like, how do we
motivate them to want to fix it?
Yeah, and how do we reach those kids who, you're doing all the right things, you're saying, come in and see me. You're saying, hey mom, I need Ashlyn to come in and see me. And so I think our challenge moving forward is thinking about the Ashlands of the world. So what's next with her? Because it sounds like the rest of it, you're in a really good place. So I'm interested to follow up with you on that in the relatively near future, because this is something, really when I ask Anne these questions, it's something that I don't feel like I have a sincere grasp on either. So I'm interested
to hear, because it's more black and white.
I think it's more like those kids that you're like, I don't know what else to do. Like I've talked to the study center person, I've talked to mom and dad, I've talked to the kid, I've reached out to the counselor, I've reached out to the administrator. You're like, what else? So I'm interested to hear where things go with her and what insights you're led to, because I think frankly, I think that's a deficiency that we have collectively as a culture at the school. Is I think we do really well by about 90% of our kids, but I think there's this small constituency of kids that we all get to a place where we're like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, we kind of get to cheat though, because if you don't pass first semester Algebra 1, you get sent to the repeat class. So any kids I have now that are struggling, there's not going to be many. There were a ton, and they got sent to repeat. So
Yeah.
now it's kind of an easier number to focus on. So
Yeah.
we get to cheat in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think that leads to a great opportunity with maybe, I wonder, a little bit with Ashlyn and some of those other ones.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's
Sometimes
the cheat.
it's starting them. Hey, you guys are all working groups. These 4 are going to work with me, and you get them just enough started. Hey, can we continue this? I know you have 4th hour tomorrow. Like, I know you're just so close to getting this. I bet if we did like 2 more practice problems, boy, we'd be set, and you'd get this, and then we'd pass that quiz. It's like getting them enough that they have to come in, and they see, like, oh, I'm so close to understanding this. It's like just bothers me enough that, shoot, I have to go in and sit with Sawyer right now. So creating the want
Yeah.
and the need.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard, Amy. 20 years of trying to figure it out, and still it doesn't work for some kids, but I keep trying.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I love the fact that you're trying and don't give up.
Yeah.
Because you're creating a giant toolbox
Yes.
of things that you'll find will
Well,
work
it's
over
relatively
years.
empty right now, but it'll get
Hey,
there.
Yeah.
But you have to start from somewhere.
Yeah,
And give
exactly.
Yourself,
Yeah,
give
right.
yourself credence for that
Yeah.
belief that you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing great stuff.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. How was your semester overall going?
This semester?
Yeah.
It's going well.
Yeah.
It's,
Minus the
it's fine.
illnesses.
Well, that's killing me. That's
Yeah.
the hardest part of the semester.
Yeah.
But that's not school related, so that's good.
Yeah. It feels, I don't know if you feel this way, but I bet it probably feels good to be like on the downhill side of things too,
Of the semester?
Or the year.
Yes and no. I think
Yeah.
my first year is just hard because I still don't know, like, in theory I kind of know what we're teaching, but it's so different once you get there, right? Like, just understanding what knowledge they're coming in with, where the challenges are, so I don't think there's going to be a point in this semester or this whole year where I feel like I'm on the downhill.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like first time all uphill. Then next year will start to be the downhill when it's like, okay, I can start to tweak this, and oh, that worked, that didn't. But I don't even have anything to tweak yet. So, yeah.
But you will. Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, we're doing great stuff, Amy. I hope you get to feeling better. Thank you for your time
Of
and
course.
your willingness to
Oh, yes.
be a part
Yes.
of this experience.
Of
My
course.
I'm
gosh,
sure
thank
it'll be
you.
sufficiently terrifying